That's air raid sirens in Taiwan. The military is conducting drills ahead of a possible visit from House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Probably with good reason. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff says we should all be paying more attention to the Chinese military, who are, of course, plotting a takeover of Taiwan. Mark Milley admits the Chinese have become significantly more aggressive in the South China Sea. This message is the Chinese military in the air and at sea have become significantly and more noticeably more aggressive. A Chinese ship supposedly ran off a U.S. destroyer in the region a couple of weeks ago. And over the past several months, Chinese pilots have had a number of close calls with Western fighter jets, harassing U.S. airplanes and allied aircraft in the skies over the South China Sea. It's supposed to be international airspace. It's a big problem in the Taiwan Strait. 110 miles of water separates China and Taiwan. About a third or a quarter of all freight and trade in America goes through that strait in the world. A Chinese spokesperson threatened military action if Speaker Pelosi makes her planned trip. Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, former Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, joins us now. Mark Milley doesn't say that unless he's got significant intelligence that goes far beyond what we publicly know. What kind of things would he be seeing that would raise his level of concern?
Leland, he is seeing all of the intel that's coming out of the 16 agencies that make up the intel community. And that's signals intelligence, it's overhead imagery, it's human intelligence. So he is seeing everything. He gets a daily brief that is just about everything the president sees. And I'm delighted that he is actually taking this as seriously as he is, and he is warning people because he has a history with the Chinese that I don't think we would have seen this previously, but now I think he's stepped up and he's acknowledging the seriousness of the threat of China.
What is it that he's seen, you think, that has caused this change, number one? And number two, what he said is sort of half a sentence, right? It's they're being more aggressive. The other half is what we need to do to confront them that we're not.
Yeah, I think that what Milley's looking at is he's looking at things that are not even necessarily out of the intel community. They're open source information. And that includes the things like the Chinese buying up all of the land, the agricultural land in America, the Chinese hacking our systems, our telecommunication systems, our email accounts and so forth. And all of those things that are clear to every American that pays any attention, these are being done by the Chinese. And maybe the biggest one is maybe he's finally concluded that, in fact, the COVID-19 virus was, in fact, created in the Wuhan labs as they were doing gain of function. Whether it was released deliberately or not is speculation. I happen to be one who thinks it was. But there is only anecdotal evidence on that. He's seeing all of this, and there's no other reason for them to do these things other than the fact that they want to dominate the world.
You pointed out them continuing to buy farmland, U.S. tech products, and the like. Here's a map. They're buying a lot of farmland in North Dakota. You would not have us believe that it is a coincidence that it's just 12 miles and on the flight path from one of America's nuclear bomber bases, nor is them putting Chinese cell phone technology near nuclear arsenals, as reported by one of the other networks this week. What I can't understand is you think about U.S.-Chinese military capabilities. U.S. Tripled the spending. China has a few more people, but the U.S. has multiple times the number of aircraft, a few less ships, and 6 times the number of nuclear warheads. Why is China even a competitor or being allowed to be a competitor?
Yeah, first of all, I think China's Navy is now the largest Navy in the world, so they have bypassed the United States. Secondly, we need to understand with regards to a lot of their capabilities, they have this hypersonic technology, some of which can be fired from their ships at sea. This is dangerous stuff because we gave up our program years ago, and now we're playing catch up. So why is it happening? It's because we have not broken the code on how to stop funding their military buildup. And one of the latest things, if you can believe this, they were about to, the U.S. was about to put all of our thrift savings plans from the military as well as the rest of the federal government into Chinese holdings. That is a tragedy, and I and some others have really made an issue of this because this is the worst thing we can do at a time when China is building their military to be superior to ours.
Yeah, continuing to fund it, and also we're continuing to get a lot of our technology stolen, which is something you and I have talked about as well through hacking. General, it's always good to see you. Thanks for taking the time.
Good to be with you, Leland.
Yeah. Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.